Thank you all for joining us. This is Wednesday the 9th. This is a regular meeting of the Pear Beach Building Committee. And so with that, we're moving on to our first order of business, which is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of September 11th. And I know those have been circulated, so if I can just ask if anybody has any comments or feedback on those. I have a couple, but...
If you could figure out how to make my name get spelled right.
I know.
It's right up here.
It's all correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so my couple of changes down where it says in this first paragraph, Tom, we have Connecticut Deep to discuss option 2. I just went back and just looked at the actual reference in the presentation, so I'll give you my copy, but I think it should read Site Design Approach Number 7 and Scheme B as a proposed project. So those were the items that were discussed with Deep, and I'll give you my copy. And then the only other small thing was on the bottom. I think at the time the room wasn't known, so it's room 206.
Yeah,
so I'll give you that. Yep. So if I can give you that.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have any comments? Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Second.
So as amended, all those in favor? Great. Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, so moving on to our next item on the agenda, it's public comment. So we would invite comments from the members of the public, and it's a pretty crowded room this evening, so we've got a lot of stuff to cover, so I just ask that we keep comments to 2 minutes, and Pam will time. So if you would just come up and indicate your name when you come up, and
Name and
Address.
street address.
name and street address.
Street name, I don't need the actual address.
Hello, my name is Nancy Stein. I'm at 15 Crane Road.
No, there's a list.
We have a sign
Oh,
on this.
okay.
Are we not using this order?
Okay, so we'll follow the sign-up list.
Joe Warren.
I'm not trying to be rude, but I have another
Well,
meeting I have to get to.
thank you very much
So I
for
want to
that.
get my comments over with as early as I can.
Thank you, appreciate
My
it.
name is Joe Warren. I live at 410 West Avenue here in Darien. I don't even know where to start. I've been swimming at Pear Tree Point Beach probably long before most of the people in this room were born. I'm a firm believer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so I'm at a loss to explain why we're trying to do what we're trying to do here.
Excuse me, Mr. Warren. Did you tell 79 to go?
Yes, yeah,
Sorry,
we got
my
to go.
mistake. I just want to make sure we're being recorded.
Couple of things, and I don't know that everything I've heard is correct, so if I say something incorrect, somebody stop me. I want to talk about just basics. There's a question about the fence. The fence has a gate in it at the beach end of the fence, in addition to the gate where the guardhouse is. I was told, and if I've got this wrong, correct me, but I was told that the sole purpose of putting that gate in there is if we have a fire at the beach house, the fire apparatus can't get out of the parking lot, so they have to use that gate. I've been driving fire apparatus in this town for over 50 years. Trust me, I can get that apparatus in and I can get it out. We do not need a gate in that fence in any way, shape, or form to accommodate the volunteer fire department. And anybody who has told you that hasn't bothered to ask the fire department. Second of all, I'm very concerned that you're contemplating putting a 2-story building at the beach and putting an elevator in. I know the problems that we've had with the elevators at the Darien train station, which are exterior elevators. I can only begin to imagine the concern with an elevator in a salt atmosphere. And if there is a problem with the elevator and somebody gets stuck, again, it's the fire department that gets called to get them out. So that concerns me. My biggest concern, I am totally opposed to spending taxpayer dollars to build a facility that will compete with existing facilities within the town. Again, I refer to the fire department. I belong to the Norotan Volunteer Fire Department. We use that firehouse as a fundraising event. We hold birthday parties there. You're going to build a room down at the beach, and you're going to rent it out to people You're going to compete with what the fire department does, and I do not believe that is a good use of public tax dollars. I really think you've gone completely overboard in what you're trying to do at Pear Tree Point Beach. It works just fine the way it is. I see no reason why we need to be spending taxpayer dollars in trying to fix something that's not broken. Thank you.
Betty Hartmeyer?
My name is Betty Hartmeyer, and I live in Harriet Lane.
I'm sorry,
I-
what, Lane?
Betty
I
Hartmeyer.
got it.
I live on Harriet Lane.
Thank you.
I have been a resident of Darien since 1965, and I'm a graduate of Darien High School. Pear Tree Point Beach has always been the most tranquil and lovely place to be. I posted on Facebook, you probably know you're from Darien, and was astonished at over the 200 responses I got within 24 hours of people against your proposal. I went to the Historical Society and talked with Marianne Castal, who is our town historian, and she sent me a statement which she would like me to read tonight. This is a statement from Marianne Castal. The distant outline of the gazebo, standing alone against the sky, is iconic to Darien and speaks loudly about who we are and our respect for the powerful aesthetics this simple statement makes for both Pear Tree Point and Darien. It is the centerpiece and the focal point of this simple, personal beach. Beaches in Darien should have contrasts of personalities and should not all look the same. I certainly and personally understand the need for greater accessibility, but wonder whether a small motorized lift on the gazebo's rear side could be possible for access instead of a large wraparound ramp with railings that could destroy the whole simple meditative outline. It creates linear confusion on that spot, and the original statement would be lost. And that's from Marianne Castal. I don't like your proposal, and I do feel that the beach needs upgrading, and it could be done simpler, with less money, and better for the residents of Darien. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here's Marianne's statement. Thank you. If someone would like, we will post it.
Theodore Osgood?
Street address, please.
I'm Theodora Osgood. I live at number 20 Good Wives River Road. And I've been a neighbor of the beach for a long time, and I ride my bike down there. I see some of you down there. Actually, I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but looking at this tiny little model, I can say already, I think it's going to be a lovely space for the town and for all the residents. I've, in the past, looked to find a place like that to have a party, a small birthday party where the kids could run around, but I could tell the parents, look, if it rains, we can go in a room. And so we're having the party, rain or shine. There have been parties at Pear Tree Beach. I've been to some of them, but luckily the weather's been good. I don't know what the parents would ever do if it suddenly poured rain and they had invited kids, or you could even have an adult party there. Everyone here probably has family, grandchildren. They come in from out of town. You want to have a space where you can get together, have a family reunion. What better, nicer place than the beach? I know the fire station sounds good too, but I think a lot of people will love to use this space. I have a book club. We look for a space to have a luncheon sometimes. There's bridge clubs, there's mahjong clubs, there's Audubon clubs. I think it's going to be a very lovely place to have a small gathering and know that you can have it rain or shine.
Thank you.
Janine Hackett.
Janine Hackett, Pear Tree Point Road. In spite of many residents in town asking for a cost estimate just to rehabilitate the existing buildings, you still haven't explored this option. One of your current building committee members has repeatedly asked for this information as well, and it has not been given. To date, you haven't explored it. The Pear Tree Point organization has hired an architect and a builder to give estimates for such a project. The estimates came in fact, it could be done for under the 50% of the assessed value of the existing buildings, the $96,000 that you've listed on your website. You're not being truthful in your frequently asked questions online when you say that it would take this amount of money just to update the bathrooms. Your statement neglects to include the fact that the reason it is costing so much to renovate the bathrooms alone is because you are planning a major construction on the bathhouse by tearing down a third of the building, removing the existing roof, building a green space on a newly constructed roof, building new walls, and more. This is not the price tag for just updating the existing structure. This is the price tag for a major construction project. Updating an existing structure includes some piping, some drains, new fixtures, things like that, not this price tag. Those residents that haven't attended all your meetings don't understand your objectives. Your goal is to build a rental program space, not to simply update the bathrooms and concession stands like the town residents requested in the town survey. The Parks and Recs Commission and the department director are pushing this community space down our throats under the guise of needing to build a two-story structure because of FEMA regulations. Cost is a major issue for many, many residents. Spending excess money on creating a community space that is not needed is fiscally irresponsible. The existing concession stand can also be updated without a full catering kitchen that is planned in the new building. The current menu at the beach does not require anything but a refrigerator and a freezer. The current concession stand has irregular hours because of low need and little business. Spending money on a new full kitchen is not warranted for this type of need. Okay. Am I done? Is that what your thing said? Okay. My last thing is how
Would
can
you
this
like to
project be
please finish?
justified?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jean.
Delise Ballison.
Delise Bolleton. I live on Pear Tree Point Road. I'm going to read some of the comments that were posted on our petition. From Nickerson Lane, leave Pear Tree Point Beach alone. From Raiders Lane, the proposed parks and rec plans for this area are completely unsuitable. From Talmadge Hill Road, we've enjoyed Pear Tree Point Beach for 28 years and can't fathom changing the simple, beautiful spot to relax and enjoy the sound. With 6 clubs available for people, I can't imagine a reasonable reason why town taxes should be used for this eyesore on our treasured beach. If people want to lease party space, the DCA can accommodate. Even the Weed Beach Pavilion would work, or a sponsorship at any of the other clubs. The simple, quiet beauty of Pear Tree Beach should remain as it is for all Darien's tax-paying citizens to enjoy. From Raymond Street, building a 2-story building at Pear Tree Point Beach is not environmentally sound, destroys a wonderful scenic view, and is not economically sound. From Nearwater Lane, update the current building, address flooding. A big structure would not be suitable visually. It would be an ongoing economic drain. It is not a responsible way to use taxpayer money, and it is unnecessary. Weburn Lane, Darien needs to spend money wisely, and this does not fit that requirement. Renshaw Road, I fully support your petition. My family enjoys Pear Tree Point Beach for its simplicity. If we want a concession stand and rental space, then we go to Weed Beach. The bathhouse restrooms at Pear Tree Point Beach have been in need of repair for years. Functioning sinks, product dispensers, toilets, partitions, and showers. Raymond Street, please don't waste taxpayers' funds to build in a known flood zone. Norotan Avenue, please leave the beach I have gone to for 63 years alone. It has so many memories and it should be kept a small town beach. Du Bois Street, one of the most beautiful beaches in Connecticut. Keep it the way it is. Middlesex Road, I am against spending taxpayer money on developing the beach. We have a fully renovated beach in town, Weed Beach. Building a 2-story structure in a flood zone that gets flooded regularly is a waste of our tax dollars. Pear Tree is perfect as it is. It works. Residents use it. Non-residents use it when the gate guard leaves. It is a treasure as is. There is no need to spend taxpayer money just to say you built something. Anything you build there will be subjected to weather and flooding unless you change the height of the beach or raise the structure. Do we really want that small building raised so floodwaters go under it? That would be a dramatic change, visually blocking the water, changing the character of the beach completely. Listen to the community speaking out against this and take our concerns seriously. Did you put your hand up? No.
Thank you.
Nanny Stein.
I'm Nancy Stein, 15 Crane Road. That's okay. It's our understanding that a budget number will be revealed at some point to the taxpayers, and we're assuming that that budget number will be the entire Pear Tree Point Beach project as sort of an all-inclusive number, with the costs including building the two-story structure, the ramps around the gazebo, adding 18 feet of sand onto the beach, the costs to change the parking lot, all the costs for landscaping, and of course including the complete redo of the failing boat ramp and the required dredging that might be needed with regard to that project. So when a number is revealed, we're hoping that it's an all-inclusive number so that the taxpayers know and they truly have a sense of what that number will be. I have another question, and it's regarding the cost analysis for maintenance. Clearly, it's been discussed that the elevator is going to be an issue with all of the elements. Has there a cost analysis for maintenance been done for the new structure, including yearly heating of the structure and year-round heating of the structure? Have costs been formulated as far as maintaining the elevator and ensuring the safety of all the people using the facility? There have been financial projections on what revenue, or have there been financial projections on what revenue the town hopes to make from this proposed year-round rented flexible space? Do you honestly think that the revenue that's generated from this space will justify the cost of building the space? Why push this through P&Z without a budget? We have had architects working on this project for over a year, and it's hard to believe as a resident that there aren't numbers that have been floating around as to what the possible costs might be. Taxpayers want to know, and taxpayers deserve to know.
Susie Fahey.
Susie, could I ask you to spell your last name, please?
Fahey, F-A-H-E-Y. Susie Fahey, Coach Lamp Lane. I'd like
Thank
to
you.
read some of the comments that we've received about this proposal. Charles Lane, don't understand the need for a rental space. Pear Tree is a small beach and don't see the benefit for Darien residents who use this beach. Pratt Island, please stop this ridiculous waste of funds and proposed eyesore. Henry Street, I'm in favor of improving the current structures, but not for building new ones. Boston Post Road, agreed. Our property taxes went up 16% just last year. Holly Lane, the best solution is to maintain and improve the current site. Fairfield Avenue, as a fourth-generation Darien resident, my children are fifth generation. I do not support building this rental space. Whose idea was this? It's not needed, not attractive, not fiscally responsible. Rings End Road, Pear Tree Point Road is not suitable for more traffic. Hollow Tree Ridge Road, I used to live at 100 Long Neck Point and can attest to the photos online. The parking lot regularly flooded, rendering the entire facility useless. It's irresponsible to build again in this zone with our public dollars. Leeds Lane, if the town feels the need for additional meeting space, it doesn't need to build it on beachfront property that would take away from the beauty and charm of the location. West Avenue, this is a major waste of Darien taxpayer money.
Miller Road, Darien. My husband and I walked the loop the beach along Neck Point Road, then back to the beach along Pear Tree Point Road. The beach is flooded often throughout the year, especially in the fall and winter months. Many times the water fills the whole parking lot and reaches the road. It doesn't seem like anybody has taken that into consideration. Why would you spend so much money building something that ultimately will not be utilized as designed? Post Road, high tides are a reality. McLaurin Road. No one asked for Pear Tree Beach to be reimagined as a multi-story community meeting center. This is not a goal that's rooted in the town's master plan. There is no public demand for it. Thank you for mounting this effort. Beach Drive. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all that's on the list.
I'm not sure all of us knew about the list when we walked in the door.
Well, feel free, please.
Anybody else? I think some ladies here.
Yeah, we're not done with public
Thank you.
comment. Thank you.
May I have your
Perry,
first and last name, please? And-
Perry Boyle, Boyle, Good Wives River Road. And I'd really like to address you rather than the committee here. I'm the guy who says this is the Putin process. You notice how comments are at the beginning, not at the end, so we don't know what we're talking about. You notice how we're not allowed to ask questions. I'm allowed to read for the record.
Excuse me, I just want you to read it,
Oh.
say it into the mic.
Oh, thank you.
Because you're on channel 79.
Oh, is that the TV?
Yes.
Got it. Oh, there it is. I don't know if you read my piece in the paper, but some of the comments that have occurred during this process are extremely disturbing about how decisions are made in this town. I think there's a person in this room who said on TV 79, we don't listen to public comments in these meetings, only to dissatisfied people come. I think there's somebody in this room who said, it doesn't matter how much this costs. The town will bond for it. This is not a good process, and I think you should be outraged by what's going on here. Thank you.
Just one quick point here. This is a little out of order in terms of responding, but there's certainly no one on this dais, and there's no member of the committee who made the statement that cost is irrelevant and that cost does not matter.
Watch the tape.
Well, I would just simply ask then that you point out for the benefit of the community the exact tape, the date of the tape, and the point in the tape where that statement was made.
I'll submit that to the paper.
So next comment, please.
Hi, I'm Mark Noonan, Dogwood Lane. I have one question or one comment. Given that this is in apparently a zone that floods a lot, how are you going to get this thing insured, and how much is that going to cost the taxpayers, not just now, but say 20 years from now, particularly if there's more flooding and more big storms like Sandy, et cetera? Thank you.
Thank you.
Evangeline Ames Murray, 49 Norotan Avenue. Mine is kind of a global question of how we got to this point, when this clearly, from everything I've understood and read and researched, was in 2017 one of the lowest ranked priorities on in terms of what the residents of Darien, wanted. So I'm wondering how we got here today for a needless expense that nobody seems to be, that it does not represent the popular will of the people of Darien. It's echoing, it's very disturbing to me, because it is very reminiscent of what is happening on different levels, including the federal government, where we're told what we need. I've never seen a survey. I've never seen any outpouring of desire to have the beach renovated to this extent. I've never seen any proposal to fix what exists and maintain what is there and make that beautified. And frankly, it's very disappointing that this is happening in Darien, to our very special town. I have friends, just as a side note, that can't get a variance to add on to their deck, and yet this is going to be a variance to build a 21-foot hovering structure in a flood zone, and will
receive a variance. So I'm not only disappointed and alarmed, I am totally mystified how this can happen in our town, in our process, and that the will of the people of Darien is being so extinguished. Thank you.
I'm Ann Sullivan. I also live on Pear Tree Point Road. And I have another 2 more pages of comments from people from all over town. I don't want to take up everybody's time by reading them all in excruciating detail. I could submit them. But I've lived in this town for 30 years, and I just find this whole process absolutely perplexing. I do feel like there's an agenda for people to create something that they can put a feather in their cap and say, look what I built, look what I've done for political process. But I have not spoken to one person, young, old. I'm a social worker, so I see a breadth of all the people in town, and not one person thinks this is a good idea. Not one. 0. I generally said, people, what do you think of this? And people are just appalled at the misuse of taxpayer money. And I happen to live on the road, so in fact, an enhancement some people would say, well, this would be great, maybe it'll improve your property values. It's not. It's a flood zone. We watch this parking lot be covered in water. Why does this make any sense? And nobody on any of these committees has ever been able to explain to me why this makes any sense when I walked around this building today trying to find the meeting, and there are hundreds of rooms available in this building. We don't need more meeting spaces. We have tons. And it disappoints me so gravely that the town would be so disrespectful of what the citizens want.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lauren Keena. I live on Raymond Street. I have worked at the Darien Boat Club for the past 9 summers, but for 9 summers of my teenage years. And I can tell you that on a nice summer day, that parking lot is packed to the gills to the point where it's actually overflowing with cars. And cars are parked on the side of the road. They're parked in areas where they really shouldn't be. And I'm truly confused as to how this plan, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is supposed to take away 45 parking spaces from the parking lot. If you're trying to increase access to people for the beach, decreasing the number of parking spaces does the exact opposite. And yes, the space on the beach may be bigger, but the actual access has been decreased. And if you're trying to create a community gathering space, which the beach already is, decreasing parking and easy access to that space totally defeats the purpose. And so I'm sort of struggling with how this is beneficial at all. And as many people have said, through those 9 summers of working at the boat club and a whole lifetime of going there, I know that given any high tide, any strong wind, any rainstorm, not even including hurricanes, that space floods so dramatically that there were days where I couldn't leave work for a few hours because I physically couldn't drive my car through the water. So I just feel that it's a very irresponsible choice. It's not a good use of taxpayers' money. And it's not creating that community space that you're discussing. It's actually doing the opposite. Thank you.
Hi, Lori Duarte, Pear Tree Point Road.
Lori, could you spell your last name, please?
Duarte.
Thank you.
I have young-ish kids, and we use the beach all the time. It definitely could stand for an upgrade, so I have no problem with an upgrade. But I just think that this isn't an upgrade. This is a new build. And I think from everything that we've heard throughout town, there's been constant request for some other mention or showing of an upgrade. The gazebo could be lovely. It's pretty run down. It could get fixed. The bathrooms just need to get fixed, add an outdoor shower. There's a beautiful space under pretty trees where there's some barbecues on another side of the beach that no one ever talks about. So I'm just frustrated that though it would be nice to have it look nicer, no alternatives have been presented. So I'm against that alternative. Thanks.
Do we have any other further comments?
My name is Rolf Oben from Archer Lane, and Pear Tree Point Beach is just that, it's a beach, and I would love to see it approached in that manner, that the beach needs restoration. There's work that certainly I think is part of the plan that works in that direction, but I have to agree that I don't understand this planned building. And so I would like to also recommend that if this should get to the RTM for a vote, I, as an RTM member, would like to see a separate vote on that building, separate from all the other improvements that are planned for the beach. And the ramp, the boat ramp, has been an ongoing problem for many, many years. That was a parks project when I first moved to Darien, and it was discovered that the angle in which that ramp was installed was incorrect and has been that way to this day. So from my perspective, the Parks Department is just following through to correct a mistake that was made by the Parks Department many years ago. And so my perspective is to restore the beach, preserve the beach, fix the drainage problems, fix the ramp, call it a day. Thank you.
Hi, Susan Tremaine, Goodwise River Road. I agree with everybody who's talked about the issues there, and I don't agree with this kind of large upgrade. A small upgrade would do. But I also think that you need to consider the access to the beach. And when we're looking at the small roads that are there that also flood, but I also think about that intersection right over the bridge. That bridge has been there for a very long time, and the structure itself, I don't know if it can actually withstand the amount of traffic that it would bring into the area if you do this larger area. And the amount of traffic that's there now with all the construction, I look at those trucks, I look at that bridge every day. I look at those trucks going back and forth, and I look at the amount of cars that come in and whiz around the corner. Most of them don't even stop at the stop signs. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And I look at the bridge and just wonder, what cost will that be when this is all done and you have more people streaming in, not to mention all the construction? I think it'll be a problem.
Thank you. Further comments from the public?
Hi, I'm Iris Mix, Wild Rose Lane.
Sorry, what lane?
Wild Rose
Thank
Lane. Full disclosure, I'm also a current RTM member, District 2. And I've had lots of emails from people talking about this, and so I've gone back and reviewed and looked and tried to educate myself on what's going on here. I disagree with the size of the project, but everybody else has already gone through that. So I just wanted to make a few points in that I know recent newspapers said that you had gotten approval from DEEP, or that they don't have an issue because for some reason they think the sand is building back in that area. So I would just caution you to not rely on the fact that sand is building back, because one big storm will take the sand away. So I think that's not a good argument. This is a wetlands and it changes. It changes by storm. I completely agree with people who say, why are we asking for variances? Why can't the buildings be pulled back into where they're supposed to be for a flood zone? You know, building a building that needs a variance is just like, what are y'all thinking? The whole scenario that you don't know what the parking needs are there, and so whether it should be A, B, or C parking size is, how can you make that determinant if you don't know how many people park there and how many people are going to park there? And if you do have a larger concession stand or a meeting place, how does that affect the parking from what it's been in the past? So there does not appear, and maybe if there is, I'd be happy to look at it, if it doesn't appear to be any parking studies of what. So how are you going to make that decision on what the parking is? And the biggest thing to me that is really lacking here is that if you build this thing, there are maintenance costs that are going to skyrocket. It sits on the beach. It is, if you have these maintenance costs, that's fine, but that's going to increase our taxes. Maybe we can bond this whole thing and it won't increase our taxes, but maintenance costs for the elevator, maintenance costs for somebody's got to clean up after everybody has these parties that they're going to have at this place. So that's a piece that really needs to be thought through, because there's a lot of people on finance and budget, and there's a lot of people in the that work really, really hard to keep the costs down in this town so that our taxes don't raise. And the other thing I just want to say is that I spent 3 days at a conference this summer called Keeping History Above Water. It was all about climate change and flooding and how to save historic buildings because of all the water that is rising and the flooding and the moons. And so I think it behooves a community like ours where we have resources and we have a highly educated population to look at our wetlands and to be proactive about being the people that find solutions that work well for wetlands and for the future that is coming. And I don't see that in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Peter Van Winkle, Baywater Drive. That's a monstrosity. And when you put people up higher, remember, you're next to the water. Water carries sound. I remember when they just had that road race. It was nightmare at night just listening to it. And if that's high, I presume that you're going to have air conditioning in that. When you elevate air conditioning, it goes a long way over the water. It's not a well thought out plan, and if you have to do it because of FEMA, why not just relocate the building somewhere else? Why not just move it back so that people have an unobstructed view of the water and the beach? Thank you.
Any further comments from the members of the public? Further comment? No?
I'll go this week. I'm just off the cuff. But last weekend was Parents' Weekend at my daughter's college. Sorry, Bridget Whitney, 31 Beach Drive, Darien, Connecticut. And I'm just going to share a personal experience. I've been there all this off season up until now. So last weekend I drove back from Pennsylvania. It was a very long drive. It was a beautiful weekend. All I wanted to do was get to the beach. I actually live closer to Weed Beach than I do to Pear Tree. So I went to Weed Beach. Pulled in at the gate. I could see there were a bunch of cars. And the guard said, well, actually there's a special event. So I was like, okay. And so rather than deal with the special event at Weed Beach all season, I went down to Pear Tree. It could not have been more beautiful. There were families, there were older people, there were younger people, everybody just congregating, just loving the beach for the peaceful little place that it's meant to be. And, I've read everything you've written, and beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and I suppose some people think that a two-story structure with all of this decking and everything is a beautiful thing. But I have spent countless hours at that beach speaking with people who just appreciate the simplicity and the beauty of the beach just the way it is. I don't know what $100,000 in bathrooms, a few sinks, a few toilets. People are asking really for simple improvements. I think that whatever, close to $100,000 could go a long way using the structure that we have now that has no need to go to any planning and zoning the way it is. And that's just, my experience with the beach. It's simple. It's beautiful. Leave it the way it is. That's what the taxpayers and the people who love that beach are asking for. Thanks.
Further comment? Okay, so if there isn't, and thank you very much, thank you, all of you. If there isn't any further comment, we'll just move on to the next item on our agenda. We have Neil Hauk and his team here with us, the architects, consulting architects on the project. And I think at this point, we'll just turn it over to you, Neil, and then, of course, whatever Q&A comes from the members of the committee, we'll kind of work through that interactively. So.
Okay, so we last met, I believe it was September 11th. And since that, yes, we last made a presentation to this committee on September 11th, I believe. And so since then, we have been continuing to try to gather information to make sure that we have designed a building and a landscape structure that.
Excuse me, hold on one second.
Can the screen be turned so that the
Well, hold on one moment. First of all, we really do appreciate sincerely you all being here. It's very important to us that you're here. But this is a committee meeting, and really the purpose of this discussion is to inform the committee. So it's difficult enough for the members of the committee that are sitting up here. I'd love this room to be a different kind of setup, but I think at this point we've just got to make sure that the committee is getting as much information as it can. So appreciate that. If you guys want to move around the room, please feel free. But we've really got to get on with the remainder of our agenda here. So apologies that the room isn't set up kind of more, kind of accessibly, but it is what it is, and we really just need to make sure that we're moving forward with the committee's work at this point. So.
Okay, so basically we've spent the last month meeting with various representatives of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, some of the state agencies, and I'll just summarize those meetings. So on September 16th, shortly after our last presentation in the committee, we met with Jeremy Ginsberg and Woody and Fred from their staff. And we basically presented the project to them, presented the site plan, the floor plans, and the elevations, and we really just wanted to bring them up to speed with what we were doing and to make sure that we were on top of the zoning regulations and what variances, if any, we were going to need. So that meeting was on September 16th. The next day, we went up to Hartford with Dan, and we met with Diane Mizell, who is the representative from Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. And we met at their offices in Hartford. And once again, we reviewed the project and we reviewed the application process for getting their approval. So she was very helpful. She really, laid out very, in good clarity, the process that we have to go through. And Dan's going to be handling that part of the process. So I know he's started to gather information to prepare that application. Then we were hoping to have Diane Ivkovic at that meeting as well, but she was out of town that day. She is the representative in Hartford who handles the flood compliance, FEMA compliance. She's the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Coordinator. She couldn't make it to the 17th meeting, so she offered to actually come up to our offices here in Darien, and she did that the following Monday, which was September 23rd, and we reviewed the project with her for compliance with FEMA regs. She confirmed at the time that the project was conforming to the regulations. There was one loose end that we weren't quite sure about. And Jeremy Ginsberg wrote a letter to her to clarify that one point. We received word just today that our interpretation was correct. So we believe that we have a design that conforms to all FEMA regulations. Then a few days later, we met with the planning and zoning staff again because we wanted to clarify the approvals process from this point forward, and specifically with an eye toward our application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think as we mentioned at the last meeting, that we're going to be requiring 2 variances. One is a rear yard variance, because technically the mean high water line is the rear yard of this property, and we are required to have a 40-foot setback from that. However, we've also done some research and determined that every structure that has served this beach since the beginning has encroached into the rear yard setback. Some of them have been much, much larger than the structure that we're proposing. So we feel, and Jeremy agrees with this, that we are actually, over time, the town has made each successive building more and more compliant. And this one would be more compliant still because we are raising it up to meet the FEMA regs. However, we still do need the rear yard variance. The other variance was a variance for the width of a parking space. We're asking ZBA to allow us to use the grandfathered width, which is 8.5 feet, in lieu of going to their new town standard, which is 9 feet wide. And the only reason we're asking for that variance is because we'd like to get more parking, as much parking as possible, and given the design. Anyway, so that was on the 26th. The next day, we had our structural engineer in, and we had a long meeting with him to explore the different ways to actually structure this, not only the building, but the ramps and elevated viewing platforms. And there are a number of different ways to do it. The most challenging part of that's going to be the foundation work. And so we had a very good discussion with him. He has since given us sketches for a couple different options that he thinks would be the most effective way to go. So we have those sketches in-house, which has enabled us to, to, among other things, feel comfortable with the design that we have. Then last Tuesday, Brian met with Peter Solheim, the Darien building official, just to review our plans for conformance with the state building code. And that was a very good meeting, and we are or will be in conformance with the state building code. And finally, over the last couple days, we have worked in conjunction with Weston and Sampson to come up with a preliminary construction budget, which is really our first stab at what we think this thing might cost. And we're going to present that a little later on in this presentation. So that fills you in really on what we've done since the last meeting. We haven't really changed the design at all because there was no reason to. And we feel we have a design that addresses the mandate from the Parks and Rec Commission, and that it is as sensitive as possible to the environment and to some of the concerns that have been expressed by local residents.
And you'll just, before you move off that slide,
Yeah.
Danielle's name, her surname is misspelled.
Oh.
So I can get that to you, but you probably have it, but it's Missell on her card.
Okay.
Missell. So I think if we could just change that for the PDF that'll get posted to the website, so folks have an accurate name.
Okay, will do. Okay, so I thought the next thing we should talk about tonight is what the next steps are. So right now we're planning to present the project to the Architectural Review Board next Tuesday. Now that's just a very informal presentation. It's not a formal item on their agenda, so they're not going to vote on it. It's just an opportunity for us to familiarize them with what we're proposing, so that when we come in next month, they will have an understanding of the project and can get more specific with some of their questions. The following night, I think it's a week from tonight, we will present the project to the Parks and Rec Commission. And that basically is an opportunity for the commission, who gave us 2 months ago a mandate, to weigh in on whether we have met the items on their mandate. The following week, the following Wednesday, the 23rd, is the deadline for submission of the application to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that's when we'll be requesting 2 variances. So the deadline is the 23rd. The actual presentation to the Zoning Board of Appeals at a public hearing isn't until November 20th. So that's just before Thanksgiving. And then we think we should wait until after the ZBA public hearing to submit the application to ARB. And the thinking there is that if for some reason ZBA doesn't grant the variance for rear yard, we'll have to go back to the drawing board. And so no sense getting ARB involved until we know that. But assuming we do receive both of the variances, or at least the rear yard variance, that's the important one, the more important one. I'm sorry, they're both important, but that one is, I think, the more important one. Assuming we do get approval on the 20th, and they do vote that night, we would then be submitting the ARB application on November 26th and make the formal presentation to the Architecture Review Board on December 10th. Now, following that, if ARB approves the project, I think the deadline for the January meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission will end up being on December 13th. I don't know that for a fact because they haven't yet published their 2020 calendar. Right. But it's typically that, it typically falls at that point in the month. And you know, if we feel that things are going well, that ARB is going to approve it, we're going to try and get the application ready to be submitted so that we can submit it on the 13th. Fallback position would be to submit it in January for the February Planning and Zoning meeting. And that's a public hearing, and they will look at the project in terms of the CAM requirements, Coastal Area Management Review. And then the last item here is the COP application to the Connecticut Deep. And Weston and Sampson is working on that. I think there's no set deadline. That can be submitted really whenever it's ready. And Dan said today he thinks it'll take 3 to 5 months for the state to process it. So it would be to our advantage to try and get that in as soon as possible. But on the other hand, I think Dan is reluctant to do that until we know that we have approval to put the building where we want to put it. So,
Neil, excuse me, is that the COP doesn't really apply so much to the building as to the site work and the repairs of the ramp.
It's mostly the site work, that's correct.
Right, and the ramp and possibly if we have to dredge.
Correct. That's all part of the COP.
That's all.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a possibility that you're going to have to dredge. You're going to have to dredge at the end of the ramp. That's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
I think that's all going to be part of Dan's application. That's part of what we reviewed with Danielle, thank you. With Danielle. And she was very encouraging, by the way, and was very familiar with the site. One of the things that she passed along to us, which I thought was quite interesting, is that she was able to take satellite photographs or aerial photographs of the beach dating back to 1934 and determined that not only has the beach not eroded away, if anything, we have more sand or more beach than we did back then. which we were all surprised by when she.
Just one minor point. I think what she was saying is she has, and she was referring to, like, I think it's a Yukon aerial photo database.
Okay.
Coast. I think what she was saying is in that database, the photos go back to 34, but I'm not sure she said the photos pertinent to us actually go back to 34, so I just don't. I know she said they have the ability to look back in history.
Oh, okay. Then that was
So
my
just,
misunderstanding. I thought she said that she actually.
She may have, but I'm not, I didn't.
Is it possible that we could see some of those or get some
Yeah, I
of
think
those?
we need to reach back out to Danielle maybe, and
That would
we can
be-
ask, maybe
that would be
with
interesting from
Dan's
the
help,
standpoint.
and have her kind of clarify that.
They may be online.
Yeah, I think they are, just not sure where they, I fished around, tried to find them myself.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff online.
It's amazing, yeah. So if we can maybe make that an action item, we can get some help from Dan maybe to kind of get to those.
I have a question. I read Dan's synopsis of the meeting, and with respect to the building and getting permit, it says you will need to include alternative analysis and review of recommended alternatives to be provided with the permit application for review by DEEP.
Yes.
What alternatives will you be submitting?
So I think what we're going to do is go back and submit the different scenarios for locating, for designing and locating the building that we presented to this committee.
So I've only seen location, kind of in the bathhouse area.
Yes, right.
No other locations or an alternative of renovation?
Well, I think one of the things we'll have to do is show that we could locate it in the middle of the parking lot and thus conform to the regulations, but, that's going to take away parking, and I'm not sure that's the best location for it, so.
Yeah, I think one aspect of it as well was this, the 5-foot rule that we're constrained by as well. So I think in part,
That's right.
if we wanted to keep the existing, any new building kind of roughly within the footprint of the existing buildings and have it coexist with the restrooms that would remain at ground level, then that kind of creates a constraint in terms of, we can think about moving that around, but it certainly can't get any closer to,
No,
the
but I
restrooms.
mean, when I think of alternatives,
Yeah.
I mean, not just,
Not dramatic.
one building is,
I don't think-
560 versus 650. I'm thinking either a different location or a different building, but
Yeah.
maybe they're okay with just seeing 3 different scenarios in the same location.
yeah, we'll have to see, what they're okay
I
with.
just wonder.
She seemed to, after we described the process to her, she seemed to be okay with that, but
Yeah.
that's something that has to be developed as part of Dan's application.
Okay. Could I had one other question with respect to Dan's write-up. The Darien Boat Club structure, it was sort of noted surprisingly that it's not previously been permitted, and that's kind of surprising given that they just very recently, paid a lot to put on a new deck. What are the implications? I mean, is the structure under any, are there any problems?
I don't
Are they
believe
expected
so.
to get a permit?
I think it's just something that fell through the cracks. I don't know whether it's been permitted with the town. I mean, there might be a building permit. I just don't
There has
think
to
it was.
been a building permit
I would
after
think so.
Sandy, when we built the deck and put all those pilings in there and relocated the building.
I had
Tom,
the-
do you know?
Yeah,
I don't know. I can ask the Commodore.
Yeah, I would just say, having sat in a meeting with Danielle, I think the point she raises, it's not within the DEEP database
Right.
that
That was-
they maintain of all kind of structures within particular properties. And I think she felt as though it was just kind of a formality, and maybe reading too much into it, a formality just to get that information updated, so it's reflective now of all of the structures at the beach, but I think that's still.
That was my conclusion, too. I think she just wanted it to be part of their database.
And not at all suggesting there's an issue or anything
Yeah,
that's kind
not
of
an
whack.
issue. She just suggested we include it in the application so that it becomes part of that whole site.
Now, are these all separate applications, the parking lot, the building, the boat ramp, wetland restoration, or is that one
No,
overall
I think it's
application?
one application.
Okay.
The COP, I think, stands for Certificate of Permission.
Permission.
Okay, so that tells you what we've been doing and what we're about to do. We brought along a slide of the proposed site plan and then local blow-up of the building structure area. In this case, we have added dimensions and spot elevations as requested by Martha in one of her emails. So that information is now readily available.
Martha, you want to take a look at that?
And the first
You're
and second
comfortable
floor
with-
plans?
I know you were looking for some
Yeah, I was
additional
looking, yeah, you
dimensions.
got it, so that's good.
Great.
That's the elevation. That's the elevation.
And then,
Oh, wait, a minute. No, that's, we've got the perimeter dimensions and, but the elevation is on page, on the site plan, right?
Yes.
7.92, yeah. And,
so now, I'd like to take a moment before we get into the review of our preliminary construction budget. I'd like to show you a model that we've made at a scale of 1/8 inch equals a foot. We did that, done it for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is because it allows us to continue to solve design issues and that sort of thing. And if you'd like to take a moment to look
Yep.
at it, you may, or we can go right into the
Would you guys like to take a closer look?
the rest of our program.
Just for the benefit of all, also, the intention following this meeting, and we'll have to make arrangements for this, is that this will be placed in Town Hall, and we'll invite the member of the community to come in and have a closer look at it.
And the gazebo will be redone?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a redone gazebo?
No, the gazebo was remain, just to clarify that question, the gazebo is remaining intact.
We're not
Nobody's
rebuilding
touching any aspect of the existing gazebo.
The existing gazebo will remain intact?
That's what I just said, correct.
Okay, but on the gazebo, there was a crack in the floor. We had talked about that a year or so back. Is that going to be?
That stuff will be repaired.
That we can repair?
Basically, I would think so. Repair it all. I mean, it's a lot.
I know, it's kind of everything. Dangerous setup here. This is broken.
We're discussing
Trying to think about sitting down there and watching people in a wheelchair.
There's a ladder bar like ever seen.
Excuse me, can I just ask, we're still trying to conduct a meeting here, so if I could just ask, if you want to have a conversation, if you could just step outside, please.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have the stairs on the other side, on the south side, okay? So this is the north side. We have the stairs to go up on that side, and we have that nice deck over there. But if you come along this way, you've got to go up here, around, and this way, you get into the gazebo.
That's got a landing.
Right, and that's a landing with some chairs and tables, and you can, I'm just saying that is there any way that that ramp, on the pitch that it has to be, to go into the south? There is a step there where it used to have a, there used to be a way. I'm just, it's a long way to go all the way around to get into the gazebo.
Yeah.
You can go on that staircase.
Right,
I think
on the stairs.
the ramp is the
But the ramp going up and around and then back in, if you wanted to have a party up there, and we're making it handicap accessible, okay? And to
Fellas,
use that.
excuse me, fellas. We're trying
We're
to have a
on
meeting,
tape,
please.
so we're trying to talk. Is there any way with the pitch to be able to get on the south side, on north side? in there?
Possible. We have to take,
Possible or possibly?
possibly, I don't know, we'd have to work it all out.
I like the landing there.
One of the reasons that we designed it the way we did was to have the experience of being right at the water's edge as you're going from elevated
Right.
platform to the upper
Right.
elevated. You really lose that over time. Plus this thing brings the beginning of the ramp pretty far forward. It's something we can explore, certainly.
This is also reflective of the additional depth of the beach now, right on both beaches.
Yes.
So the additional 5 feet on the south beach and the additional 18 feet. Yeah, right.
So this is 18 feet.
There's a little bit more of a plaza.
Okay, and that we're going to keep as a shaver or some sort of non-sand.
I understand what, are you talking about what we would do in the ground area?
The ground area, and then the outside showers will be on the outside of the bathrooms.
Right in front.
So,
Right now,
Yeah, you get for the water.
yes, please.
So it's just sand between the ramp and the steps? Is that, you know, the
Yeah.
ramp going in front as you go, what's the spacing between them? Scale on this.
in the ramp and
Stairs, yeah.
You're going to have 400 more cars available.
The spaces? I'm just kidding. They're not.
Placement of the model.
What's that?
Placement of the model of 8.5 or 9 scale.
Yeah, they don't have to
Yes.
go to the gazebo. I was just trying to figure out a shorter route.
Okay, so do we lose the projector, or do you turn it off?
You want to explain what you have to do?
Oh, yeah.
Take a look. Step down for a moment.
What's the same thing, basically? Yeah.
So, this, I'm just trying to figure out how large this deck is.
The other thing that we have done is to prepare a smaller model showing the existing building and our proposed new one. So just for scale in terms of width, length, height, we all can compare it to.
Very cool.
Bill, can you estimate, I mean, the bulk of the building exclusive of the deck around it?
Right.
Square footage wise is, we thought this other thing was about 2,000 square feet.
It's pretty close to
Pretty close to the same footprint, maybe a little different shape.
the elevator and the deck that wraps around it, which one needs because we're raising the thing up in the air, is what adds really to the footprint.
Right. But the structure itself is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Did we lose our projector?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so.
Did we lose Mark?
It's just stepped out for the restaurant. Cheryl, do you want to?
Oh.
No, please feel, I mean, do you have a question or
Well, yeah, well, I didn't know what slide you were on.
what does it look like?
First and second floor plan, Neil?
That one.
That's the first, yeah.
Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out the size of the decking around the building. I see in the lower left-hand corner by the stairs, 5 feet 10 inches. Does not include the stairs. Then if you go up to the point, you've got, see the 9 and 1.5 inches? What is the size of the deck from the building out to that point and to the right of that building? I don't see the size. I see 8.3 on the right-hand side, but I don't see, and I see 510 on the bottom, but I don't see the top.
No, I think, Cheryl,
That's
you're looking
square
for
feet.
the width of,
I was-
from the edge of the deck to the edge of the building.
Yeah, from the building to the deck,
If you scale that 8'3" with just your thumbnail from the
8'3",
corner
over here.
over on the right-hand side, you just take your thumbnail and go over to the other corner, it looks like it's about the same, maybe 9 feet.
No, that's different.
No, it's
Pretty
quite
much
different.
No, it's not.
If you go from the top to the, up at the
Never
top,
mind the
Randy.
top, Sharon, just, if you go from the 8'3", take that corner and go the same way to the south, where it is there is about 8'3". Now, how much it is, the rest of the way, you've got to sort of scale that too.
I'm talking, Randy, I'm talking about from here to here.
From there to there?
Oh, in the back of, towards the.
Okay, that's
I'm talking about
looking at a
from,
different
this
side.
is the back of the building, the building wall. I'm talking about from here to here. This is the deck.
About 14 feet.
Okay, to this point, or, I mean,
From there to there.
okay, from here to here is about 14 feet.
Approximately, yes.
All right, it's okay. And then from here to here would be what? From here to here would be 18 feet. Okay, can you do that on the slide so everybody can see it? And then this is about 5 feet out. Okay, because that was, we had asked, or Martha had asked for that before, but I,
Well, Martha
square
asked for
feet.
overall dimensions. I don't
Right.
think she asked for specifically that.
Okay, well, because you have it on the right and the left sides and on the other three
You know,
sides.
could I ask you a question? When, in the schemes, the other schemes, you showed the community room, the square footage with storage.
Correct.
This was without,
Yes,
but do I
we
just
changed
add the 64 and the 60 to come up with the total, to make it apples to apples, to see how it
Yes.
compares? Well, then this is bigger than the last one, the last scheme we represented. I mean, it was 652, now it's prepped to 668. Previously, it was 615. I mean, we're getting a creep here.
We haven't changed the size since the last presentation.
Oh, well, okay, maybe things have been shifted, but,
I don't know.
544, and you're saying 60?
It's actually
was
from,
60.
by, I believe, 9 inches from the north side. So it's smaller than it was last presentation.
It's small.
Just
So
Brian,
Brian
No, you
believes
count
it's
the
9
bathroom,
inches
too.
smaller than the last presentation.
Last time it was 652 with
Did
the
you
storage.
hear-
yeah, so,
Martha, did you hear
Now
what he
it's
said?
601.
no, I missed that. What did you just
Brian just
say?
said it's actually smaller, Martha.
Say that again?
Brian just said it's actually smaller.
How so?
Do we-
Because you said we're including the storage last time, and.
Sorry?
Neil- the dimensions we were provided with included storage the last time.
The square footage did, yes.
Right, and so this one, it's separate, but I just asked Neil, I said, well, should I add in, to make it apples to apples comparison, the storage plus the restroom? And he said yes, and if I do that,
Not-
that
not
adds
the
up to...
restroom.
Not
the restroom.
Okay, not the restroom,
Just the
okay.
storage and the community space.
Okay.
Those two.
Okay,
we
those two.
combined
That's 608.
last time. This time we separated them.
Right.
So that it was crystal clear how big each space was.
So if I look on the plan that you presented on the 11th, if we take that top lateral dimension, that on the new plan is 25 feet. On the 11th, that was 25 foot, 8 1/4 inches. So that's smaller. If we look at that vertical dimension, 21.9.
It is, now that you don't include the bathroom, I see
Yeah,
it now,
yeah, yeah.
as
Got
long
it.
as you're not including the bathroom.
And those dimensions as well are, want to just take a peek at the,
I have it.
got it, okay.
It's creeping
I have
slower.
some, I do see that. I have some nuts and bolts questions here. Now, the lifeguard storage, if it's storage, that seems exceptionally large to me for lifeguard storage. Have we resolved the police storage issue yet? I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. And the first aid storage, what is going to be stored in the first aid storage area? I mean, are we gonna have a sink and a cot? Can you have that down there by FEMA? I thought you can't have it at,
We're
It's a new
limited in terms
building.
of, you cannot have a sink. You can
Right,
have
we
a
can't have a
sink.
sink.
You
You
can
can
have-
have temporary things like seating, place to lay down,
So we
that
would-
can be moved in and out.
Right.
Yes.
well, I mean, I would think first aid needs to have water.
Neil, I thought you said there's devices that are effectively portable sinks that
Yes.
you hook up with a
Yes.
hose, and therefore, if there was an incoming storm, it could be
Correct.
removed.
Exactly
It
right.
just can't be attached to the wall, but there is a way
Can't
to
be-
accommodate
Well,
that.
anyway, my thought is, all of this looks kind of large, and we haven't addressed the police area yet. I mean, I'm just thinking, could this building be made smaller? The storage building below? I mean, it just,
Well, I think we're gonna need storage. Facilities are gonna need
Well-
storage.
well, okay, well,
That's
all right.
really what they need the least.
Well, isn't the
All right.
lifeguard storage really the lifeguard's room? That's where they go when
But
they're.
can they use that? Does that FEMA allow?
Of course.
Well, they said a
No,
bathroom.
no, well, just to clarify, I mean,
It's a new building, though. A bathroom
You
can
can't-
only be used if
you can't
it's
have- You can't have a
renovated.
bathroom at grade level.
It's not running water.
Right.
It's not running water.
It can't be a habitable space.
But they say, well, but if it's storage, it says storage, parking, or access to a building under the FEMA regulations. I mean, does storage mean you can use it, inhabit it? I don't think so.
As
The
long
way it was explained to us in Hartford was that as long as it was not finished,
Okay.
you can't have sheetrock on the walls.
Okay.
And as long as you have the ability for floodwaters to flow through,
Mhm.
we're fine.
So people can inhabit it.
Can do anything.
Okay.
And the reason, and I wanted to point this out, the reason this is as large as it is because we have to put structure below the upper element.
Okay.
So we have a series of piers, and then there'll be beams that connect all those. So we don't have to build this part so large, but it just makes sense to do that because you've got the piers there anyway. Why not build out to the piers and take advantage of it? It's cheap to construct and it gives a lot of valuable storage space.
A couple weeks ago, I gave the presentation to the Park and Rec RTM committee of the plan from the 11th, and there was a couple of questions, now that we're on this, that I could not answer at the time because we really hadn't discussed it. So I would like to know, the question was the removable walls. What are they built out of? How will it really fall down if we get a real big nor'easter coming and the water pushes in there? It falls down, this wall I'm assuming will fall down. How do we rebuild this wall? Where does that fit into this scheme? How do we go about rebuilding it? Do we need another permit? Do we just go back in with Park and Rec and Public Works and put up a wall? That was one of the questions that came up at my meeting.
So FEMA is very specific about ways to detail the walls. You can either build a permanent wall that has slots in it that allow the water to flow through, or you can build a wall with panels that are meant to be breakaway panels, and they're very specific about how they detail that. And that is the kind of thing that our engineer is going to detail for us if we move forward with the construction documents phase of the project. Now, to answer your question about rebuilding it, if we go with the breakaway partitions and floodwaters take them away, you will probably need a permit, an emergency permit to reinstall them at some point. But that's the kind of thing that building departments grant quickly, as they did after Hurricane Sandy, to get people up and running again. So I don't see any issues with that.
Neil, is there a point where the wall breaks away? Is it like 60 miles an hour wind or 100 miles an hour wind?
It's not the wind, it's the water pressure.
Okay. And as part of, before it starts to break away, do we have flood vents and stuff go through it so that we get some water before it self-destructs? Is that up to TD?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that we can't use flood vents only,
right,
to where you can in Roten Bay, because this is a velocity zone. So that's why we have to go to the greater extent. But that's a good point. I would think if you could put flood vents in to try to allow the flood waters through, and then only in a real storm surge have the panels break away, that would preserve them for a longer period. Good point.
So, I mean, are these, it's hard to understand, is this like a category 3 hurricane? You know, the surge would be such, I mean, I'm just wondering are we building something that's going to, if we have a hurricane, a foregone conclusion that it's going to come down, or are we building something that it's really going to have to be a category 5?
I think they're talking about a big storm event. And from what I've heard about the existing pavilion, I think that's withstood a lot of storms. So, I personally think that...
but that's been, that's brick and block.
That's true.
So if these walls downstairs, down at the grade level, fall apart, is that going to upset the upstairs in any way? Because they'll be on the pillars more.
Yeah. So the structure for the upper pavilion itself is designed to be flood-proof.
Right.
So we don't worry about that.
Okay.
Actually, the component that is probably at greatest risk is the existing bathroom element.
Another question, I noticed the kayaks are still in the plan.
No,
and my thought was, if you don't have the kayaks there, could you put decking below for people to sit on?
That's a point we can get to later.
It's germane in terms of the design of the building, I think.
The only reason the kayaks are still in is because we are presenting tonight the design that we presented last
Right, okay.
We have to make changes.
Well, anyway, that's just a comment. Thought is, if you're not going to use it for kayak storage, people could sit beneath shaded area.
Sure. Okay, would you like to continue on to the preliminary construction budget? Okay, so we basically have prepared a budget in 2 parts: site work elements, structures, and then the total estimated cost. So the site work elements were estimated by Dan Biggs of Weston and Sampson. And I want to stress tonight that this is a preliminary estimate only. It's based on a pretty set of floor plans and elevations, and lots of experience from both our firm and Dan's firm. But it still is, it's an estimate that is, has been put together at a fairly early stage of the project. So, starting with the site work elements, this is general conditions and mobilization. That's $75,000. That includes all kinds of things like, that are necessary to set up for a project. Then you've got the erosion sedimentation controls. That's the siltation fencing and hay bales that will get put up to prevent erosion. Then there's some demo, some clearing and grubbing of things, and then some asphalt removal. Then some milling of asphalt, and some rough grading, fine grading. Then we'll install the underground drainage improvements, catch basin, piping, the check valve that we want to install to keep the parking lot from flooding at high tide. There's some compaction, and then asphalt, paving, paving, and then striping and marking of the paving. There's some concrete pavers in the current plan. It's not all asphalt. Some concrete walkways. The boat ramp, the work there is estimated at about $137,000. There's a dumpster enclosure, and then there's a number of landscaping elements.
Neil, does the boat ramp include dredging?
In the vicinity of the boat ramp, I don't think it includes the dredging out.
That's not.
Well, Dan wasn't sure. Is that part of this project, or is that something that the boat club handles? We don't.
It's an open discussion at this particular point in time. It really is not this project, whether the town wants to dredge it or not, or the boat club wants to dredge it. That's still in discussion. We're just trying to figure out when the process starts and how much it's going to cost and where we're going to dump.
But to correct the angle of the ramp, do we need to dredge?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there has to be some level of dredging.
No question about that.
But we're only going up, it's only like a 20-foot deep spot where that hump is.
Yeah, I mean,
And then
yes.
after that, it becomes this whole separate project.
Right, but what the boat club and/or the town, still to be decided, want to take advantage of when the dredging occurs.
Sure.
That we do some minor dredging specifically on the east-west channel.
That makes sense.
So.
Thank you.
But if we were to dredge for the boat ramp, then it's got to be included in in this budget.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Boat ramp and the physical construction, the construction, and also the disposal.
Right.
The disposal is almost as much as complicated as the boat ramp construction.
Do you have any idea how deep that is now?
No.
We did soundings years ago for,
I did soundings in October, a year ago this time. I'm on a 3-year plan as the harbor master,
okay,
but I don't go to the boat ramp because that's not my jurisdiction.
So you just do the
I know,
channel.
I do the channel from, pick a number, 20 feet out from the boat ramp, all the way to the Coast Guard buoys.
Right.
And what's happened, just so anybody knows, it has silted on the east-west channel, not in the main channel, but on the sides of the channel, and when two boats try to pass each other, there's a problem depending on the size of the boat and the depth that it draws,
Right.
especially the larger sailboats.
Cheryl, do you mean right at the edge of the boat ramp, or, I mean, along the sides of the ramp, it goes down to literally almost nothing?
Yeah, when we dredged before, we dredged 6 feet deep. Took 160 cubic feet out of there, I think that's what the permit said back then.
That was before my time, so
Before your time,
I
right.
don't have any
And
knowledge of this.
I know it was 6 feet deep at that point. So I was just wondering what it is now. Is there any way of doing some kind of sounding there? Just
Yes, there is, but again, that will probably be done as part of the
part of
construction of
this
this
whole
ramp.
project. Okay, so this 137.5 includes what, Neil?
I can't answer that
Dan's
specifically
question for Dan.
because
Oh, it's for Dan. Okay, sorry.
Dan prepared that
Right.
and he wasn't able to make it tonight. So
Okay.
I can ask him and give you more information on that.
A question would be, does the dock have to be reconstructed and then that side, I don't know what you referred to it as, the side stone wall, you know, you're raising the ramp, do those
You're
structures
actually
have
going
to
to
be
lower the
altered?
ramp. Yes,
Well, you're
the deck, the
increasing-
dock, hopefully not the pilings, but it has to be realigned to the lower
Yeah.
pitch of the
Those-
ramp.
The floating ramps that go down can be reused.
Right.
They don't have to be replaced.
But you have some cement, you have a cement road, if you will, that will have to
Yeah.
be adjusted or
Right.
replaced.
So Neil, if you can maybe ask Dan to get back to.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yep.
Detail on that.
So moving on then there are a number of landscaping components, the seeding and mulching, restoration of the wetlands, bringing in beach sand for the areas of beach that areas of parking lot that we're recapturing as beach. There's some trees, some shrubs, and then some perennials and grasses, both along Pear Tree Point Road and then in other areas as well, the edge of the parking lot. So the total for these components, all the site work elements, came to just under $900,000. Then moving on to the buildings, the first component is to renovate that existing restroom component. We're limited to about $96,000 on that, so I carried 95 on this. The ground floor storage component is the area with the breakaway walls. That's fairly inexpensive to construct. We think that can be constructed for $100 a square foot, and it encloses approximately 885 square feet. So that's how we arrived at that number. The upper level enclosed space is a little over 1,000 square feet. We've carried $350 a square foot for that. And, that in this day and age, I would say, if you don't get crazy, most new house construction can be built between $325 and $375 a square foot. And so this is not unlike a house in that sense. It's wood frame. We don't have a lot of fancy finishes or fancy millwork, so we think that's a good number just to carry at this point until we learn more about how we plan to detail it. So that's how we came up with that number. Then we put a number on the deck and stairs. That's the deck that wraps around. Is that the decks and platforms as well in that?
That's a separate item, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the last item. So that fourth item on the estimate is purely for the deck that wraps around the new building component. It's about 1,745 square feet. We carried there $100 a square foot again. It's mostly framing. And we pulled out the railings and came up with a separate number for the railings, which we'll go over in a second. The next component is the elevator and the shaft. The elevator itself, we figure at about $75,000, and then the rest of it is to build the shaft. There's a sprinkler system. We've learned that the town is going to require us to sprinkler the building, the upper part of the building, so we've allotted a number for that. We've thrown in a number of about $100,000 for the concession kitchen equipment. Now, that's just a stab based on other commercial kitchens that we've done. It fully depends on how the town wants to fit it out. So that's something that we'll get into at the point where we develop construction documents. The next number is for the railings. We've got lots of railings on this project, so we thought it would be prudent to pull that out as a separate line item. We have 521 lineal feet, and we have $235 a lineal foot there. That should be LF, not SF. So, and overhead doors, we have 3 overhead doors in the community room. We're estimating $20,000 per door. And then, last but not least, the ramps and viewing platforms at the gazebo. There's about 1,240 square feet, which we figure at $100 a square foot. So the total for all the building elements came to about $1.3 million. When that is added to the site work elements, we decided that it would be prudent at this point to carry a contingency, and a fairly healthy contingency. So we carried 15%, which brings us to a grand total of about $2.5 million.
Neil, in your figures for the structure, I know we decided a couple of weeks ago maybe that there was not going to be any air conditioning, but we were going to have heat. Have you got something in there for the mechanicals for that?
Yes.
And the power, we're going to bring power in. Is that part of the 88,000 from the previous page?
That was
How are we
part
gonna
of
deal
the,
with
yeah, the 88,000. That was Dan's estimate for bringing utilities in.
Underground or?
Underground.
Okay.
I confess that in that last line item, I do not know what he means by aquatic construction. I haven't had a chance to quiz him on that, so.
When you worked up the estimate on the railings, were you looking at like the cable railings?
Yes. Well, that's actually based on.
Well, we used the wire mesh rail for the estimate.
So we actually estimated it based on using wire mesh instead of a cable railing, which is a little bit more expensive. So we wanted to make sure we were covered.
What's the wire mesh?
There's a material called banker wire, which is like a gridded wire that you can use in panels between posts.
See-through?
Oh yeah, it's see-through. It's transparent.
It's better than just cables if there's little kids high up over the wire.
That was our concern.
Yep.
So.
Oh, okay.
Again, that's a detail we'll get into when we get into the construction documents phase.
And the timing of producing these estimates in terms of where we are in the process, you're comfortable that this is, it's not premature, it's not, I mean, your feeling is this is the time, if we were to use the analog of other projects that you've been involved in?
Yeah, this is about the time when we would do an estimate like this. We're at the end of the design phase. We're getting ready to go for approvals. If we get the approvals and if the budget works, then you would authorize us to go into the construction document stage. And then we would do detailed construction documents, then put them out to bid, get bids, select the contractor, and then construct the project. That's sort of the long view of what the process is.
Does your firm manage the bid process, or is that something that the town does?
No, we would do that.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, the town administrator may want to get involved in that. As I recall now, with Weed Beach, I think the town administrator ran that process, now that I think about it.
I think that's the protocol.
I think that's
It's a
right.
very formal
Yeah, it's a
procedure
very
in terms of
formal
opening the
process.
bids
That's right.
and everything.
Yep.
That's right, right. Yeah.
It was a construction manager as well, right,
Yeah.
Yes,
for weed.
yes.
Cool.
Also, a very lengthy series of approval steps that we're going to have to go through before we
Yeah.
get anywhere close to that step. Mark?
Have you done an estimate of time from once everything is dotted and the i's are crossed and whatever, from start to finish, how long it would take to do the project?
To build it?
Yes.
I haven't given it a tremendous amount of thought, but I do believe that if we were able to start it after Labor Day, 1 year, whatever year that is, I do believe it could be finished by the following Memorial Day.
Okay.
I mean, Weed Beach, we built a larger bathhouse, we built a paddle hut, we redid the parking lot, a larger parking lot, we put connectors between all the paddle courts. We did a much larger scope of work and got it done in that period between one Labor Day and the following Memorial Day. So I'm fairly confident that unless we find something funny with the foundations, that we can do it.
Okay. Obviously, there's a boat ramp timing issue too, so we need to make sure that that doesn't start until after, like, the second week in November, or the boat club's haul out is different than yours. Yours actually having this week, I think, right?
No.
2 weeks, okay. So that's just a timing issue that we need to be aware of for both clubs.
So just to clarify, so we're talking roughly like a mid-November date, the earliest date at which...
Yeah, the boat club is usually out the first weekend in November. That's the last time, and then the club closes the first weekend in November, and opens up technically, I think, the first weekend in May.
Got it.
People like to get in earlier, but on that, and then the yacht club is towards like the third week of November, is it? October?
Usually,
Yeah.
around the 20th,
But that,
21st.
that's when the club pulls out, and so people have the option of going around and do different things, but,
But based on the bulkhead that we built when we built the building, rebuilding that ramp in that time period should be a piece of cake.
yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, Randy, what'd you say?
I said based on the bulkhead building that we've done over at the road, rebuilding that ramp in that time frame should be no problem at all.
The biggest issue is securing the dredging time, because it's a relatively small project for a dredger, unless we can tie into the town.
And with the boat club.
The boat club, and the road and yacht doesn't need to do it. And again, the survey that I did a year ago today says the main channel is fine. It's just this one area by the boat ramp and then the east-west sides. The channel on the east-west sides is the primary issue.
How far out would you want to dredge that?
How far out would,
Yeah.
they'd have to do a survey, to see how far before it settles. I mean, I have the stopping point of my survey that we did. Again, the boat club and the yacht club helped pay for it. And I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was probably 20 feet off the edge of the existing ramp today.
So go up 20 feet off that. What about to the left side, going around where people have problems getting?
That's what I'm talking about, is the
that
east, that's
left,
the east-west
east-west
channel.
side. Okay.
And it's the southern point of that channel that is silting.
Right.
You can watch it on a really bad low tide.
I've seen it.
You can see it kind of
Right.
fall off, and it just rubs up against the area.
So that side, that's the east side. The west, yeah.
East-west is the side
Right.
that goes from Pear
That
Tree
side.
Point Road to
Right, and then the other side.
Baywater Drive.
Hey, Tom, would it be helpful to maybe arrange a separate conversation with you and Dan, maybe to just clarify a bit more specifically, or how do you want to, just trying to understand how to kind of get it?
It's early in the process, so as we start moving down that side, yes.
Got it.
He can have a copy of the report that was done by the engineer.
Perfect.
And again, the issue we're going to have coming up shortly is, doing a sounding test because all of our boats will be out of the water.
Oh, I see.
So, but if we bring in the engineer, they can, the engineer firm that I use can come back and do that. I don't think Dan's going to do it.
Yeah, I'm referencing Dan because we're looking to him to coordinate all those aspects.
That's fine. Yeah, again, I can give him the contact we used and whatever, and give him the reports.
Okay.
I mean, it was the report, the basic report from the dredge did the surveys. We did not need the dredge.
But
The main channel, and things have changed over the season.
I did, just a question on applying for the COP. Do you have to have tested the dredging material for contaminants before you apply, or does that take place after you apply?
Don't know the answer to that. Every time we've done, when the boat club was looking to expand a couple of years ago, they did some environmental testing and it all came up clean, up the river where they were trying to go. I was talking to Mr. Freight in his store, and he was saying that he thinks it's very clean, and again, this is his opinion, because if you look at all the clams that are above the water in the muck or the mire, whatever you want to call it, there's a ton of clams that are living there now, and they wouldn't be living in contaminated water. At dead, you see them at dead low tide if you've seen them anywhere working. But
I'm pretty sure you need soil samples before you go.
And how about now with these piers on the building? Do you need to do soil boring in advance also?
That's part of the engineering to do tests.
Yeah, but I mean, is that before you apply for the permit? I'm just asking.
Well, there's lots of things you have to do before you apply for the permit.
Oh, that's part of the building permit process.
The soil boring, okay.
Are we?
I just wanted to make sure we're, moving along so that if you're doing these things, you're not going to get hung up.
Right.
Well, the guy that sees what the issue is at the ramp with that soil isn't going to be the guy that's doing
No,
the
I
test
know.
borings to
Yeah.
where the building will be. But
Tom, is the boat club on board with this dredging?
The boat club has asked us to stay in touch with them as we start getting closer to dredging, and they'll work with us on it.
Okay, so
They understand that, this is a town issue. It has nothing to do technically with the boat club, but it's predominantly their members that are affected by the.
right.
By the
So if we as the town building committee say, we dredge that area for the boat ramp, then the boat club is going to pay for the extra
That's still being
dredging.
determined, whether it's still town waters at that particular point in time. I mean, it's also town residents that are having the issue. So it would be a discussion between the boat club, the harbor master, and the town on what's the best way to proceed.
Okay. Is there any way, when we get to that point, Neil, that we can maybe have two estimates on that so we can see what that side of it would be to be dredged and what this part would be dredged? And then we can see how much it is, and maybe we can just combine it all into one budget. If it's too expensive for the boat club to do, like Tom said, this is town residents that are having the problem at the boat club. And we want to make it, this is, as appealing as possible and fix this once and for all, then maybe we should include it all into our budget.
Again,
But I don't know what it costs.
we don't know what it costs, but the interesting part of that is since everything is already here, the equipment and the permit to
Right.
dump, and believe it or not, the permit to dump is probably going to cost more money than the actual dredging itself.
Right.
That could work to everybody's advantage, as opposed to doing spot dredging, which is you guys had to do, what you had to do at the yacht club a couple years ago.
we did the whole area in front of the bulkhead,
Right.
in where the hoists are.
Right.
Did we ever find out if we could do this as a maintenance dredging project?
This would be a maintenance dredging.
That's
It is.
that's what the COP is.
Okay.
This is not a new dredging project, this is maintaining the existing channel.
Well, that
Channels.
saves us some money.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for, a lot of information this evening, Neil. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Rob, amazing job with the model. I mean, it's a small work of art there. Sure absolutely lovely. Brian, thanks for all of your work, pulling all this stuff together. Mark, any further questions for these guys?
I think
For
this
us?
would, yeah, I do have a kind of a concern, and I don't think it holds up anything we're doing, but I think it's information we want to have, and that is, how often does it flood? And I'll tell you what little research I did is I know that if the road floods badly, the police put up a barrier. So I called the police. And they said maybe half a dozen times a year. And I said, how do you know? And they said, we get a call from the DPW because they're concerned about it. So I talked to the DPW guy. The police department referred me to him. I don't remember his name. He said 6 or 8 times a year. All right, now some of those times are in the middle of the night, nobody cares. Some of those times are weather-related, so they're unpredictable, if you will. But on the other hand, I mean, we all talk to people that said that it floods all the time. Well, 6 or 8 times a year is not all the time. So how do we find out how much it actually floods?
Well, you're getting the best answer I think you can get is the Parks and Rec and the town are telling you what the numbers are. I don't know how else you can get it.
I mean, and you could look at the high tide charts. I mean,
Well,
recently
that
it
doesn't
was
mean
a
it.
very high tide.
Well, yeah.
The high tide chart is all dependent on the moon, on the lunar effect.
So where are you going with that, Mark?
I'd just like to know how often it floods if we're going to invest this kind of money and this kind of.
But the other thing we need to get done is we need to
In
get
this
this
location.
backflow valve,
Check valve.
check valve. As it turns out, either it doesn't work or it's not there. And that
Well,
would solve the.
that'll ameliorate the problem, but it's not going to take away flooding totally.
No, but it'll give us, as soon as we get it fixed or replaced or whatever, it will help understand what is,
Well-
when it floods.
But that check valve, that flooding that occurs at that high tide and it backflows into the parking lot, doesn't flood out into the street.
Correct.
It only floods in the parking lot.
Correct.
Mike's seen it, I've seen it, I got pictures. So that check valve is just gonna stop that,
Puddle.
basically a large puddle in the middle of the parking lot. You're talking about flooding across into the street.
Or, the whole
Or the
parking
parking lot.
lot pretty well filled.
Right. It's a different,
Yeah,
there's two different, I think we're talking two different things here.
Well, they're kind of related in the sense that if
The
you-
check valve goes in, the check valve should stop the water from coming into the parking lot. That
Correct.
clears up that big puddle.
Well, it's a
That's not
big-
gonna stop the nor'easter coming in and the, 3
Right.
inches of
Storm
rain
surge and-
But it is,
and all that.
well, it's a big puddle on a sunny day, but if
Yeah.
you do have a nor'easter and that check valve is not operating correctly, it's just one additional source of water kind of flowing back into, that's contributing to what ends up on the road.
But it won't, if the check valve's not gonna stop
No.
the water from coming into the parking lot.
No, it just,
From the
it's
front
obviously
beach.
just, the point is it's making it just dramatically worse, right?
Right.
So,
All right.
I mean, I think it's a good point, Mark. I'm not against doing more research on it. I think we could, it's in a beach. It's in a coastal zone, so
Yeah.
it's subject to flooding. I mean, that's the nature of a beach.
And the tide charts are really good, but there's more to it than the tide charts.
Well, it's
the
also,
weather.
I think
and-
I'm learning about astronomical high tides. So what we had last week on the 28th, I think it was a new moon, and it was called a super new moon for anybody who's
No
interested.
moon or something.
What's that?
I thought it was called a no moon or something.
Well, it was called at least what I was able to read, it's a new moon, but it was called a super new moon, which happens periodically as well. So in a super new moon, the effect of the tide is even more dramatic than a new moon.
Right.
And a new moon has an equivalent effect on the tides to a full moon. So once again, I'm learning a whole lot of stuff that I didn't learn in public school in Queens, but I think we know that there are a whole series of kind of causes for flooding there, including kind of astronomical high tides, to your point, storms. I agree. I mean, knowing more about what's happening, and I've been learning a lot more about what's happening, is helpful.
Well, my concern is, obviously we're not going to solve this thing tonight. I was down there at a time of high tide and I looked at the boat ramp. which is an open gate to the parking lot. And, you know, it came within like 3 inches there. So the check valve will help us with the puddle occasionally, but it's not going to help us with the
Oh, yeah.
major flooding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly, I agree.
I don't know if we need another coastal engineering guy to tell us about this, or whether we should, maybe we know enough.
What about, he raised the velocity zone? I've never heard about the velocity zone. I'm thinking we're talking winds, right?
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm sorry, what's your question?
Well, he brought up earlier that it's in a velocity zone. I've never heard anybody mention a velocity zone, so we're going to have strong winds in the next couple of
No,
days.
I'll just clarify. And we've learned this really very early on in the cycle. So FEMA has a series of designations for how they identify specific areas of coastal areas based upon a whole number of criteria. We are our beach is in what's called a VE15 zone, and it's their designation, and based upon the designation, that's what guides building in a VE15 zone, and that's why any new construction has to be up 15 feet above base flood elevation. And what that's all about is they predict it's based upon a 100-year storm. It's and so they're anticipating that once in a 100-year storm you'll have a tidal surge that's 15 foot, and their guidance is to build to accommodate that. Other areas of the town are designated differently, but we're in a VE15 zone. And we've known that right from the beginning, and we've been working with FEMA to assure that we're in full compliance with building in a VE15 zone.
And the entire park is in a VE zone.
The entire park is in a VE zone. Exactly right.
Every building before.
And once again, the VE stands for velocity, so it's the
Is it appropriate for us to ask the Parks and Rec Department to come back with a plan to fix this check valve and a time and date?
I talked to Ed today briefly and Dan back and forth a little bit about it.
Okay.
I was under the understanding that it wasn't working, but today it seemed clear that there isn't a valve there.
The reason I ask that is that could help us do some sort of data analysis over the next 6 months as we're waiting for this approval process, and certainly when winter storms come in or whatever.
Ed knows about it, about the subject right now. We just started that conversation.
Okay.
So
But
get a little bit more information.
could we
on
get a
it, see-
report at the next meeting about what that issue is, or how it's going to be
I don't know
resolved?
what the cost would be. I don't know if the town could do it.
I don't know.
So, yeah,
So-
just started that.
Okay.
Good idea, Tom.
If we could get that at the next meeting.
Could we possibly task Weston and Sampson or somebody with putting a camera up to look at the flooding and monitor it over the course of 6 months if somebody doesn't steal the camera?
Yeah, there's that.
What is that going to do for us, actually, in the
Well,
end?
just, it maybe answers Mark's question, of how often does the beach flood off into the road?
But are we gonna-
Everybody says it happens all the time.
Yeah, but it doesn't, and we know that. But I mean, is that going to change any of our plans?
No, but we'll know
So
about it.
why?
Right, it's been happening for
those
every
of-
building that's been there, it's
Yeah.
gone through it.
I'd like to go back to the COP and the alternative plans. I'd like you to think about, I mean, to me, submit alternatives. You submit the building that you've honed in on. A very legitimate alternative is renovation, and another alternative would
Martha,
be to locate, no, listen, let me finish. Another alternative would be to locate the building in another location at the beach. To me, those are alternatives, all legitimate.
Martha, we voted at last meeting to go forward with this process, and if this process fails, then we can go do that. But to ask the architecture firm
No,
to go
to
through another.
submit the application for the COP, they have to submit alternative
And
plans.
he will submit alternative plans based on this construction. It's not a new structure, a single-story structure.
No.
We voted to go forward with this plan. If we need to modify the plan, then we'll modify the plan. But that was the vote
All
that we
right,
took
if
at
they
last
accept
meeting.
that as a legitimate alternatives, so be it. I don't consider it
That's the process,
alternatives.
that's
but-
fine. And you voted that way during
Okay.
the last meeting.
Right.
so.
No,
Neil's already brought that up with them, so if they don't like that alternative,
Okay.
they're gonna let us know.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm.
we brought that up when we were in Hartford. Yeah.
And so they said just submitting your A, B, and C schematics will be the alternatives,
And we did have one
which
alternative.
all
we had one alternative very early on to put the building where the playground is now. And everybody said, no, we're not going to do
The
that.
picnic area.
The picnic area, that was an alternative, and it's in the master plan, if you go back.
Yeah, no, I
One
know
of two
I'm aware of
plans that the
Yeah.
Dan's firm came up with was moving it over to where the picnic area is now, and what we heard back is that people did not prefer.
Yeah, I think also
location.
from a cost perspective, I think we're mindful that the utilities are already pulled into that location. And so that was another aspect, water, electric is pulled into that location.
If we moved it to the picnic area, you'd have to do a whole new building. You couldn't
Right.
keep the bathroom over there.
Couldn't
And
keep
it'll be
That's
much,
one.
much closer to all the residents.
Second, it's be closer to the residents, closer to the road. I think it would block the use more. Third of all, the reason the current siting works so well is because it serves both the west and the south beach. It's a central point, right?
Which
on
may be the
hinge
reason why
point.
it's been there historically.
And that's why it's been
for the
there
last 100
historically,
years.
yes.
You know, so it's, okay, but I mean, great point, Mark.
I just don't know where to go with this, it seems like we ought to be able to find better information about this flooding. Seriously, if it's gonna flood once a month, it's different. We know there's rising sea levels. We have an estimate from Weston Sampson about over time how much the sea level will rise. And it's not too scary if we consider 40-year life of the building or something like that. But if there's going to be flooding, if it's all the time, if it's major flooding in the parking lot such that the parking space is severely limited, and if that happens once or twice a month, then that's once, during the daytime, then that's once or twice a month when the building is basically unusable, because I know I won't park my car in salt water, and nobody else would either.
But the typical flooding, from what we understand, stays for a couple hours and goes.
Well, I think
That's the
yeah. So I
pool
think
parking lot.
I think
It drains.
So I think the point, Mark, you're making is, if that's happening on a sunny day when beachgoers want to be at the beach, that's an issue that we should be mindful of. And I think, Cheryl, I'll go to you as the authority here. It seems to me like the flooding that has been well documented in photographs that's taken place on sunny days, which has taken place at high tide, my sense, from what I've observed, is that that's a function of the missing check valve. Because certainly the couple of times I've seen that, it hasn't breached.
I disagree.
Well, okay, so we can agree to disagree, but I think, others have seen that, and when I've seen it, that water has not breached that section of the curb where there's still dry sand and folks are actually sitting on that. So I would agree with you that if that flooding is happening routinely on a sunny day, I think the calculus is different. If you're concerned about flooding taking place at night or on rainy days, I'm not sure that that really has an impact on whether people are going to be going down to the beach or not. So I'm really sensitive to what you're saying, but I'm just trying to really understand. I think your question is, where do you go with it? I don't think there's anywhere to go with it if we're worrying about flooding on a rainy day or at night. If it's flooding routinely on sunny days, and I'm not here as long as many residents of town have been, but I've been there for the last 2 years quite regularly, and I've seen that effect, that phenomena of flooding on a sunny day, that has nothing to do with flooding that's preventing folks. I mean, there's a very specific issue. I think that we have to make sure that the engineers will confirm this. But it seems to me my observation, that's water coming up out of the storm drain, not coming up over and breaching the edge of the beach.
That's the information we've been given.
And we can, once again, I'm respectful of your opinion, but that's not what I've seen.
Or up the boat ramp.
I've never seen water come up the boat ramp into the parking lot on a sunny day, far enough to impact people's parking. But others have, maybe, I don't know. Cheryl, once again, I'll defer to you.
But there's nothing you could do about that if you're going to have a boat ramp.
If it's coming up the boat, I've never seen it really come up that high. I've seen it come up high, almost to the parking lot, Mark, up that boat ramp on a really high tide, full moon, harvest moon, whatever you want to call it. But I've never really seen it come into the parking lot from the boat ramp. It comes in from the back beach. the West Beach, comes in from there, whether it comes in over the sand or through that pipe
Up the drains.
up the drain. But most of the time, at a real high tide, on a nor'easter storm with 2 to 3 inches of rain, it'll come over the sand. So it comes into the parking lot that way. And that way, the whole parking lot can flood, and it goes right over to the boat ramp at that point, where the front part of the beach is flooded and the parking lot's flooded and all that. Now, on a real stormy northeastern like we had last November, where it really blew in from the South Beach and came in that way and from the north, it really flooded everything and went to the road.
I guess I'm thinking of maybe there was one instance. The picture I saw was of the guardhouse looking across, and you could not see the curbing. Right, so you could look right across the whole harbor because it was full of water. Now, if that happens once a year, we can deal with it.
That picture could have been from the hurricane.
You know, a question, all this
Yeah, I'm
talking
not sure
about
where you're going
flooding
with this,
in the
though, Mark.
guardhouse, are we going to be removing that guardhouse to get it out of the, any potential storms?
I think that having put it in, they feel that it would be pretty difficult, the way they had to get it in there now.
Well, I
The idea
thought the
idea
conversation
was
with
to-
FEMA was that
But it is
it
portable.
had to be removed.
The conversation is that as it sits now, it would have to be removed, but we can insulate it and keep it there. It was so much work to get it in there, and our equipment and our guys, that the feeling is to keep it there. But if we had a storm, we most likely, with resources, could get it out.
In fact, I read you're supposed to have a plan on how to remove it
It was
in
very
the event of
difficult
a
to get it in.
storm,
It was as easy as-
I thought it was supposed to be removable.
It
I mean,
is removable. What
removable.
Pam is saying,
It
that
is.
the requirement is that it be removable. There's no requirement that we must
Take it
actually
out.
do so. And what Pam's saying is that they would make a determination at the time
Yeah.
whether they would do that or seek alternate ways to protect it.
That's not what I read in some correspondence, but, that it would be removed after Labor Day.
Yes, that was originally thought that way. We have since determined that it'd be better to leave it unless there's a terrible storm coming.
Okay.
Mr.
It just
Chairman.
seems a shame.
People ask me about my concern. I would just like to say, I'd like to have real data for how much it floods, and I would be a lot happier about this investment if we had that. And I don't know how we're going to get it. But, I mean, I've heard of people that have the job description of coastal engineer, right? And there got to be somebody around this end of the woods who could tell us that. And I think we've
Appreciate
already
that.
discussed it
Yeah, I
as
agree.
much as we can tonight.
I agree, Mark.
Appreciate it. And I'm wondering if maybe the starting place might be someone in town, because we can bring in somebody who doesn't know the town and may have the right title, but
Another option would be to video camera it. I mean, that's a simple way to do it. It's the video cameras are date stamped, whatever time date stamped kind of thing. We could potentially put it on the guard shack, the camera location, and lock up the thing, and that's a central place. You could get maybe 2 cams going east-west, or I'm not an expert on that kind of stuff, but you have electricity, you have a secured building kind of thing.
And you got Wi-Fi, right?
But can I just clarify? Right, can I just clarify one thing? So first off, Pam, if you can see if there's a source in town, maybe, as Mark was saying, maybe anecdotally, folks, whether it's in DPW or, who responds to flooding, who might have that data, that's one thing. But can I just clarify, Mark? Your specific concern is around flooding on a day when beachgoers would like to be at the beach.
Of course. In the middle of the
fair
night,
enough.
I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, the building guys are taking care of that, If there's water, they know there's going to
Yeah,
be some.
fair enough.
Sometimes, but if it doesn't bother the beachgoers, then it doesn't bother me.
Got it. So we're talking flooding on a sunny day in the summer months.
I will talk to Jim Flanagan and Ed and police, because they would be the go-to people.
Okay.
And they would be on during the day. Public Works is on early in the morning, our park staff is there even earlier. So.
Okay, good, thank you.
Does the park staff put the sand back on the beach, or is
Yes.
that the,
No, parks.
parks, okay.
Okay,
Okay?
great. So maybe we'll do one more pass. Cheryl, anything else? Stage?
No?
Martha,
I'm good.
the secretary?
I'm good.
Oh,
Just wanted to ask about the current kitchen equipment. Does the town own any of it?
I believe, maybe a few pieces, that's it. I don't know exactly what that is.
I thought
but
we
can-
decided the stuff that was attached to the wall.
Yes.
We own, but the rest of the stuff, anything that's movable belongs to Rob.
Right. And originally Rob was supposed to take that out, and I think along the years, they allowed him to keep it there.
So the fan unit would be ours.
can we get an inventory of that?
Yeah, we have to have an
So we,
inventory.
can work that
You
into
have it?
All right, yeah, that's something we need to do among a lot of other
Or you
little
said you have
things,
an
right?
inventory? Or you
No, I
want to
said
go-
I think we need an inventory, but one thing we have to keep in mind is, it was my understanding, but I don't know this for a fact, that key pieces of equipment that one would need to effectively operate a snack bar, the town does not own.
Right.
And therefore, we are effectively currently tied into this vendor who
Right,
has
it needs-
extraordinarily favorable terms.
Well, and that is another question. I mean, have we talked to any concessionaires at all about
Yes.
an elevated one and whether they would be willing to run it and what type of equipment they
I'm in
suggest?
touch with a concessionaire consultant who handled Weeburn's concessions. And we either can bring them down for an analysis, this gives me a proposal over the last couple of days. And I just have to discuss that with the commission and decide whether we want to do that. And I haven't had a chance to look over the proposal line by line.
And this is to develop a design for the concession, the equipment
Right,
design?
and what type of analysis in terms of the space that we have, what we would need to put in it.
What type of?
No, but I'm talking about, have we talked to actual concessionaires? I mean, if we build it, are we going to find somebody who's willing to run it?
Well, I had plenty of people that were willing to run ours, but they didn't want to go out and invest in equipment that they would have just for a season. So
Okay.
lots of people are very interested in running that concession stand.
But if we invest in equipment, when you look at the
Right.
cost of the
It should
equipment
be
of what we
ours.
don't own already, when you get into the budgetary restrictions of trying to stay on the first floor, again, are you gonna, we're talking about putting
Well, if
$100,000
you
worth more
want
of
to
kitchen equipment.
alter the configuration, yeah.
No, but we don't even own it, that's my point, as much of the equipment we don't own.
I think the point is, if you wanted to switch concessionaires, you're looking at some level of an investment. That may not be that full investment, of course, but an investment that's not maybe insignificant, is that what you?
And which we may not be allowed to affix to.
On
the-
the-
well,
in the
on
existing
On
structure,
the
yeah.
existing structure on the
Got it.
first floor because of FEMA regulations. If we
Got it.
can't put a sink for a first aid station,
Right.
Well, you'd be limited by the 50%.
Well, that's because it's a new building.
Yeah.
If you were doing it under a renovation, you could
but we might
put a
still
new
go through
sink
the
in.
budget depending on how much equipment we need, is what
And
we
also
need to
want a budget
understand.
for our-
Anyway, I think it sounds to us like you're doing some work at this stage to
Yes.
better understand the use of the concession, how to approach it. Okay.
Do we own the equipment over at Weed?
No,
Not all of it.
that was the same agreement with,
Right.
same
Would you be,
concessionaire.
right, I know. Would you be looking at a possibility of having two different concessionaires?
we're looking to budget in this year's budget at some equipment for Weed Beach as well, so it could be ours.
But that's a different question than a different.
And yes,
Sure.
we could do two different,
Then you could do two different.
and that's up to the commission.
We're very tied right now by the current arrangements.
Okay, so if there's nothing further, I'd like to just once again say thank you guys very much. Done a great job on putting this together and presenting it and synthesizing all these ideas, so Robin's done a great job. If there's nothing else, I'd invite a motion to adjourn. the
Mr.
meeting.
Chair, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you all.